Greetings, grace, and peace to you. I am Pastor Katie Chelino from Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Longmont, Colorado. The following is a recording of a sermon preached at Bethlehem in Lent 2026. The theme comes from A Sanctified Art, LLC, and is Tell Me Something Good. Specifically, the good news brought this day revolves around a trip I recently took with the Nicaragua Project to the small town of Somoto. Our first reading is Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 17 through 22. You shall not deprive a resident alien or an orphan of justice. You shall not take a widow's garment in pledge. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you to do this. When you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be left for the alien, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all your undertakings. When you beat your olive trees, do not strip what is left. It shall be for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not glean what is left. It shall be for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Our gospel reading this day is Matthew chapter 19, verses 13 through 15. Then the children were being brought to Jesus in order that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples spoke sternly to those who brought them, but Jesus said, "Let the children come to me, and do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of heaven belongs." And he laid his hands on them and went on his way. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let the children come to me. In his commentary on Matthew 19, Reverend Dr. Brian Blount writes, "For children we would do anything. Children are the closest thing to a miracle in most of our modern human lives. They are blessings we indulge with the best of our energy, support, protection, attention, and acceptance. We not only welcome them into our company, we make them the center of our attention. We watch what they do, marvel at how they grow, attend to what they say." It was not always so. In Jesus' time, in the company of adults, particularly adults with a sacred agenda, children were an invasive distraction. Humble in both physical stature and emotional maturity, children occupied the lowest rungs of social status. Leaders like Jesus were not expected to climb down to their level, and parents ought not to presume lifting them up to his presence. That was the attitude of Jesus' disciples. They mirrored the ethos of their time when Jesus so desperately wanted them to challenge it by treating children the way they would treat him. In short, treating children with respect was a massive cultural, social, religious, political, and familial change. And Jesus did it. And so we, the good and faithful disciples today, try to do that too. Thanks to some very kind donors, I was included in this year's trip with the Nicaragua Project, a mission supported by Bethlehem Lutheran Church and other ecumenical congregations and donors, which provides assistance to children and their families in the Somoto, Nicaragua community. We traveled to Managua, Nicaragua on Saturday, February 28th, and to Somoto on Sunday, March 1st. Our trip included a short diversion for lunch and to see Messiah, a volcano. In Somoto, the Children's Project provides both the preschool and after-school learning. At the preschool, the children daily receive 2 healthy meals and snacks. For some, this is their food for the day. During our week in Somoto, staff prepared food and we helped serve. The children here receive not only the usual preschool education similar to that in the U.S., but also receive Christian education. Their parents also receive parenting education in meetings held specially for them. Equipping parents to help their children grow and study sets our preschool apart from others in the community and contributes to the success of our preschoolers and our scholarship students. One of our members, Robin, brought books for the teachers and students on this trip. The books were written in both English and Spanish, so they help us to learn our Spanish and help the children to learn English. The books were really well received. We also brought some lightly used and refurbished computers for some of the adults who are involved in the project. We handed out nearly 100 pairs of shoes, purchased in Nicaragua with funds raised in our Bethlehem congregation last December. We did some of the classic things you do on service and mission trips. But this wasn't just that. It was primarily a learning experience. Albert Einstein said, "Play is the highest form of research." Plato said, "You can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation." So, in Somoto, we played and we learned. We learned about kids who were in preschool or who had gone to preschool here. We learned about kids who were receiving scholarships for primary and secondary and university. We learned about kids who loved music and football, not American football, but what we call soccer. We learned about kids whose parents went to work in other countries to pay their medical bills. We learned about kids whose parents were absent, and so even though they weren't our students, they came to the school for lunch, for a snack. They played football or basketball in the park in the evenings, and they learned to play ping pong with us. And we learned how very important it is to let all the children come. Here, children are taught by a loving and capable staff of 3 teachers and 4 assistants who are supported by 2 directors. Additionally, the staff is assisted by scholarship students who are paying forward the scholarships they receive from their sponsors. These are some of the current scholarship students, parents, and Marta, in yellow, she coordinates much of the project on the Nicaragua side, along with Canada, who is not pictured here. Throughout the trip, we learned that these students continue to pay it forward, even after they graduate. This is Noelia, centered in the picture here, who was a scholarship student and is now a teacher, an English teacher, in one of the primary schools in Somoto. On her vacations, she volunteers at the preschool. This is scholarship student and graduate Dr. Oscar, who has come back to Somoto to practice in the community. At the time of our visit, he had delivered 48 babies. This is Dr. Cristel in her own dental office. Not only is she a scholarship recipient, but after opening her own practice in Somoto, she reached out to the Nicaragua Project with a plan to give back by offering free and reduced rates to people in need. Her good news for us this visit was that she added a second chair in her office as well as a second doctor. This is Sylvia, a former scholarship student, pictured with her family at the fruit stand she runs downtown. Because of scholarship support, Sylvia and her sister Carolina have opened fruit stands in Somoto. These students and graduates embody Jesus' welcome because people embodied that for them. They treat people with respect and dignity because people treated them. The Reverend Dr. Brian Blount writes, "The reign of God belongs to children, and everyone who, like children, who's not granted polite society's respect and acceptance. The children, then, are a metaphor for all who lack societal status, who so-called decent folk find distasteful and undesirable: the migrant worker, the immigrant, the alien, the homeless, the powerless, the undocumented. Harking back to Deuteronomy 24:17 through 22, where God commands the people to care for the socially downtrodden because they themselves had been beaten down in Egypt, Jesus issues a clear, if not controversial, command for his followers. They are to live as an ecclesia, a church, and this church is to exist in this world as a refuge of radical welcome. Before this trip, I thought the Nicaragua Project was all about kids, preschool, and food and shoes. But I learned otherwise. I learned that while the current focus is on the school and scholarships, in the past the project has built a church, a mother's house in another small town, a neighborhood with homes. And the project continues to extend welcome. We went with Johanna, Marta's sister, who volunteers at the school and with many local services, to visit this mother's house in Somoto, where women aged 16 through 43 had come to rest and safely give birth. Last year, the project donated medical equipment. This year, Johanna and Marta led songs, prayer, and we learned that these ladies needed more chairs and a blender. Before we left Somoto, we purchased a new blender for them. We walked through a few neighborhoods during our time in Somoto. In this one, the mayor lifted up a need for water filtration, and we came home devising plans. Because welcoming a child means welcoming who the child is, honoring where they come from, respecting who they are and who they are becoming. It means welcoming not only the youngest among us, but the oldest and poorest and most vulnerable. Reverend Dr. Brian Blount writes, "The good news is that God, through Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, extends the same radical welcome even to us. Because we are all lowly sinners, we are all unworthy of acceptance in God's reign. And yet God promises to receive us as if heaven is our home. Jesus wants his church to offer the same hospitality, to greet those of the lowest stature with the grandest welcome." And as it happens on any sort of immersion trip, we were welcomed too. Every day we would walk through town on the way to school and hear our new friends practicing their English and our names. Good morning, Robin, Mark, Rob, Lance, and Katie Ping Pong. At the end of the week, we were welcomed back at the school one last time with a fiesta, with a balloon piñata made by the students and teachers, and with dancers. At the end of the fiesta, my new friends celebrated me. They welcomed me with one last rendition of Happy Birthday, as I turned 40 while I was there. They greeted me with a beautiful cake and gifted me with a hat. And I felt like a child of God should feel. That's what this gospel is about. That's what the Nicaragua Project is about. And friends, I realize we can't all go to a little town in Central America to feel that, but we do get to embrace and embody that welcome here, in our own daily lives, in our own neighborhoods and homes, and in our worship, in our prayers and singing, in our greeting one another with peace, and at Christ's table. In these places, in these things, my hope is that you feel so welcome and so loved today. And at the same time, my hope is that you feel so moved by the good news that you extend that welcome to every child of God around you. Thanks be to God.